Hello, hello. Welcome, guys. We'll get started here. Hi, welcome. We'll get started in just a minute. I'm going to give people a chance to join, and then we will get into our first Ask Me Anything webinar, which I'm kind of excited for. This will be an opportunity for all of you to literally ask me anything Foyer related, and I will show you in real time how to work with that. We can go back and forth between Foyer 2.0 and the current version. Just make sure that when you're asking your questions, you're specifying to me if you want to see it in Foyer 2.0. I think we should focus there, but we can focus in the original version as well a little bit. Okay, hi. So you can add your questions in the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your Zoom kind of toolbar here, or in the chat. Either way, I'll go back and forth. Hello, hello. Hey, Tiana. Hey, Jan, welcome. Jean. Alrighty, I'm gonna give it like 30 more seconds, let some people. Hi. Keep joining, and then we'll get started. Feel free to let me know where you're joining from in the comments, in the chat box. I'd love to know, and we'll jump right into it. Joining from London, jealous. Welcome. Thanks for getting on. It's later for you. And feel free to start rolling in those questions now, guys. If you have any, we can just have a backlog. From Boston, welcome. In the Q&A or in the chat box, doesn't matter, I'll go back and forth. But if you have a specific question that you came wanting an answer to, please add that now, because we'll get started here. Okay, alrighty. So that being said, we do have a few questions that I know people have been frequently asking our chat support. So I will go through those now, and then as questions arise for you guys, just shout them out and I'll make sure to get to all of them. Okay. So that being said, I've been flying around. That being said, the first thing that keeps coming up is, how do I brand my renders or add any kind of text or edit my renders after they've been taken? So that's the first thing I'm going to show you. And how you do that, let me minimize myself here, is from your dashboard. So when you first log in, doesn't matter if you're in Neo 2.0 or the original version, before you actually click on a project, take your renders, get all of your renders complete, and then navigate back to your dashboard, and you're going to go to your gallery. When you click there, this is going to bring up all of your renders taken across all of your projects. So this will say recent renders. This will say renders by a specific project. You can click on view all here to expand that folder. All right, so if we just wanted to focus on, say, this room, it's telling me that there's 3 renders associated with this project. And here we are. So this is the first, and then I have my little library to the side here, and my last. So a great example for when you might want to add text, not just branding to add your logo, but I had a client recently who wanted to see their living room space in several different paint colors. So it was nice to be able to use this option, which I'm going to show you in a second, to show her 5 different renders of the same space and then add the paint color up against the wall, so that I was keeping my own brain straight and so that they knew exactly what they were going to be using and purchasing. Okay, so from here, you're going to click on Enhance Render. That's going to bring up this view here, and then the option is right here. So you can upload your logo. Your logo needs to be saved to your computer as an image file, and that will just bring up your folder. So if you're familiar with uploading a custom texture, it's the exact same process. You would just click on your logo, and then it will appear here, and then you can move it around. You can adjust the transparency of the logo if you don't want it to be too distinct, or you can add text. Add text will bring up this little text box, and then this is where you can, like I said, add specific paint colors or maybe specify different aspects of the room. You can adjust your font and so on and so forth, and the size. right here. Whatever changes you do make sure that you go to the bottom here and that you save them. It's a little hidden by the chat box here, but if you don't save anything and you just go back, all of that work will be lost, okay? So that's under brand. If you click on edit, you can adjust the brightness and contrast. So the same thing that you could probably do on your computer, you can do right here in the software. You can crop, or you can do a manual crop. Click cancel. And we also have a number of different filters. I personally don't use this very frequently because I want to make sure that the colors are showing true to what they would be in real life, but you do have that option here if you want to get a little artistic with your presentation. Okay, so that is how you brand or label your work. Click on save. When you go back, that will be saved. And then you can simply click on download right here and download this new updated version of your render as an image file to your computer that you can then send along, or you can share it directly without downloading it to your computer. Okay. These are also both options just from render mode in the software. I see two questions popping up, so let me address those first. So Nicole's asking, what software is Neo compatible with? For example, is it suggested to take 2D AutoCAD floor plan and import into Neo to render in 3D? Okay, so first of all, Foyer Neo has to be used on Google Chrome. So that's number one. In terms of software compatibility with other software, any floor plan right now that you upload into Foyer Neo has to be an image file. So if you have a floor plan in AutoCAD or as a PDF provided to you by an architect, you would simply need to take a snapshot of your computer screen and then save that snapshot as an image, which it would normally, any screenshot that you take is already an image file. So you just crop out, anything that isn't the floor plan itself, save it to your computer, and then you can upload that image of the floor plan and draw over top of it in the software. When we are exporting a floor plan, let me show you quickly. So right now I'm in Neo 2.0. So you know if the interface looks a little different. Do you recommend you guys start all new projects in 2.0? And then very soon we'll be able to migrate old projects into the new software. Okay. So let's say we wanted to export this. We would go to export floor plan. This you can, let me get this banner out of the way. You can download this top view as a DXF, which is compatible with AutoCAD and Revit. So you can just upload it into those software, but you can't upload something from AutoCAD into Foyer without first changing it to an image file. Let me know if that answers your question. Okay. If you were to click on export now, this would download this as a PDF and then this is a DXF. All right, next question, Nicole again. How can one create a legend on right-hand side with info typically found in technical drawings like client name, drawing number, furniture details written out, etc.? Okay. So same basic process, Nicole, actually, as so you can do that in export floor plan is what I would recommend right now. So if this is the view that you want of the space, you can go to text and elements. So you can find your north facing wall, you can add any directional elements that you need, and then your text here to label. So if I just click on any space, give this whatever label I need, click on edit and adjust the size of the font, so on and so forth, and position this all around as needed, okay? And then you can just click on this if you have the size and the font that you need and you want to repeat it rather than doing that process all over again, just click on clone and then just change the word to move a little bit faster. And then when you download this, all of that information will be there. I actually did a webinar just on export floor plan as well that you can check out on our YouTube channel that goes into super detail just about this tool, but feel free to continue to ask questions about this as we go. Just as another backup reference for you. Cool. Okay, I'm going to exit here. So the next thing that was coming up was how to edit our walls and the thickness of our walls. Kind of in both, not just Foyer 2.0, but in the original. So I'm in 2.0 right now. I'll show you how it's changed. If you've been with us for a little while now, it is a different process. So let me explain that. So always, whether you're working in the original version or in 2.0, my recommendation is to draw out your walls and just get the measurements as close as you can first and join all of your walls. All of your exterior walls need to be joined before you go in and start making those more minute changes to the interior dimensions of your space. What's been frustrating for our customers is that as I draw this wall, maybe this was, I don't know if you guys can see that, maybe this was 25 feet, 3 inches. And then I draw this wall, and now the thickness of this wall is encroaching on the interior dimension of this wall. And now it's shortened to 25, 1.85, right? And I need it to be back up to that 25.3. So don't try and make those changes as you go. Draw out everything, get it as close as you can, and then we're going to go in and make those little nips and tucks. And here's how you're going to do it. In 2.0, you can simply grab a hold of a joining wall and drag it out. If you've been with us for a while and you know about wall snapping, with 2.0, you don't have to turn wall snapping off. I'll explain what I mean in a second. You can just grab it and move, and you'll have that minute control. Or you can click on a joining wall. So I could click on this wall, or I could click on this wall. And what that's going to do is open up the measurement windows for these two walls here. Now I can simply click and type in the specific measurement that I need. Here in 2.0, we do have sub-inch dimensions. So for those of you who are in US or Canada, this is a really great improvement. So I could do 25 feet, 3.75 inches, click enter. And then this is approximating, so this is 3.76. That's because of the joining walls. So basically what this is telling me is the software is intelligent enough now to tell me that with where my other walls were placed, the 3.75 isn't a measurement that would make sense for the space, if that makes sense, right? So I'm just making measurements up as I go, but what it's going to do is adjust this wall length and this wall length for me, which is really helpful. And then you can, of course, always take control and tuck that back in as needed. I'm going to show you one more way that I manipulate the interior dimensions in a second, but if you're using the old version of the software, what might happen if you increase this wall by changing the measurement here is that it would cause this wall here and this wall here to kind of run on a diagonal pointing out, because the interior dimension was increasing from the center an equal amount out on either side, on the right and left of the wall, right? So now rather than doing that, it's corrected, and it will lengthen this wall, the opposing wall as well, to accommodate that. One more way that I will adjust the thickness of my walls, which is kind of like a workaround, is by increasing or decreasing the thickness of a joined wall. So if I wanted to decrease this measurement here, I would click on this arrow. So I've simply selected the wall to activate it. And now I'm going to click once, and I'm not holding down my left click. And now I can pull this in or tuck it back to make it thinner. I can enter in a specific dimension in that window that's popped up there. And you'll notice that my interior dimensions on the joined walls change as well. So if you just have like a tiny little bit, you can just increase the thickness of the wall slightly, or decrease the thickness to make those adjustments as well. I really like this improvement to the thickness, because before we didn't get to say if it encroached on the interior or the exterior, but now we have control to say, actually, I need this to come out this way, or I need this to go in. Okay, I see some things popping up here. Thank you. Okay, so Ryan just added the export floor plan webinar link in the chat box for you guys, in case you didn't see that. And let me pull up the Q&A. Okay, cool. Great, Nicole. All righty. So for the old version of Foyer, just because this is such a common question, I'm going to turn Neo 2.0 off. So if you're starting a new project and you want to use Neo 2.0, I think the default is that this is turned on now, but if it's not, just check and turn it on. And then when you create a new project, it will create it in this new version. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to access an older project. Let's try that. And show you how I would edit the walls and this for the process that you have to go through for editing the interior dimensions of your walls for that, just in case you're in like a specific project and you've already started it. Okay, perfect. So in both versions, we have something called wall snapping. This is really, really useful when you are drawing out your walls because it gives you this red line to the right of my cursor, you'll see. And that's telling me that my line is running straight. It's also helping me keep my line straight, right? By snapping me into place. When I run on a diagonal, that red line disappears. What it also does, if I say click, click again, it tells me when I'm lined up with that opposing corner, and it's telling me, hey, if you want to have a straight wall here, you need to stop moving and you'll be perfectly lined up and that wall will be running straight. So really useful for drawing out your walls. Not so useful when you are grabbing a hold of a wall to lengthen or decrease the interior dimensions, because that wall snapping functionality will cause the wall to snap at certain increments, measurement increments. So for me, I work in feet and inches. So it might snap every 2 or 3 inches, and maybe I only want to move the wall 1 inch, right? So in this case, go over to your settings gear here and simply turn wall snapping off by clicking on this check mark. What that's going to do is now give you that minute control that you have freely in 2.0, but in the original version would have to turn on and off depending on what you were doing. That will give you the option to make those more controlled movements with your walls, okay? So again, draw everything out and then go in and make those little nips and tucks. Okay, so some, let's see. Nicole is asking if I've just started the free trial, do I have Foyer 2.0? That is a great question. I want to say yes, but a quick check, Nicole, would be to log into your dashboard. You can even do it right now and let me know if it's not popping up for you. Log into your dashboard, and then you're going to look in the top right-hand corner. It should give you the option right here. It should be turned on, but it should give you the option to turn it on and off. Okay. If it doesn't, shoot me an email. I'm going to add my email address for all of you. It's just Rachel. Okay. At foyer.com. So use that email. Send me your user ID. I'll reach out to the team to see if we can have that added to your account. But this may be a feature that's only accessible once you are a paid member. Good question. Okay. Alrighty, if there's any questions about wall dimensions, just let me know, and the thickness of the dimension. So in the old version of the software, you simply click on the wall, it'll pull up wall properties, and then down here below, you can set the thickness. But again, keep in mind, this is going to increase the thickness basically from the center of the wall out equally on both ends, rather than giving you the control with the arrows that we saw over here. Okay. Alrighty, so the next thing that was a biggie was exterior rendering and also just exterior landscaping and things like that. So I want to show you an easier way to do both of these things. Alrighty, we're going to go into 3D mode. So let's say that this is a nice finished space. Let's talk about your landscape. So what I see a lot of, and this isn't wrong, it's just not the easiest way to do it, is people using wall docked cubes or floor docked cubes. So if you don't know what those are, they're very handy, but create new product would be a better option for this. So if you look up a floor docked cube, let's say we needed to have an area out here that had a yard, and then maybe we wanted to have a road or a sidewalk, something along those lines. We might grab one of these, drag it into the space. Just going to double click to zoom on in. Click on resize. And then I can resize this, bring it outside the walls, and then apply textures to it. But what happens here is that this cube will take on only one texture. So you would have to resize multiple cubes, move them out into the space, and you're also very limited because these have hard lines and hard edges, right? And then you're piecing all of these different textures together to make it look cohesive. So an option, but definitely not the best option. What I would recommend here, so let's delete that. Head into create new product and use this tool instead. I'm going to start by grabbing my rectangle tool and I'm going to cover the entire space here. I'm going to give it a little bit of height using push pull, right? So this right now is just a flat piece of paper on the floor, basically. You'll notice in any tutorial I do, anytime I'm using push pull, I'm always orbiting my screen so that I'm looking at the shape that I've just drawn from the side angle. The reason for this is if I'm looking dead on, and this is something that a lot of designers struggle with and they get frustrated with the tool. If I'm looking at this and I'm trying to pull it towards me, I can't pull my cursor out of my computer screen, right? So essentially what will happen is the software gets a little confused and thinks that you're actually trying to push it away. If I orbit my screen to the side, now it's very clear when I click and move up that I'm moving up and not down. So that's why you want to do that. Always orbit to the side so that it's very clear to the software and to you which direction you're moving. I'm going to give this a little bit of height and I'm going to show you why. When I hover over this plane, and then when I hover over this plane, you'll see they highlight blue. When you create something and create a new product, every single plane is a separate plane that can receive a different texture. So this is really useful for exteriors, but for so many things in general. So I'm going to click escape for now. And I have a few different options here. I can grab a hold of these little edges here and pull this out so that now it's working outside of the space. Ooh, there we go. Or, right, so you can do that. Or you can click done real quick. And this would almost be easier, I think. Click on it and then just resize it to move it out. And then we're going to go back into modify and now we're going to make more specifications. Okay, so I'm going to pull this all the way out. And I'm also going to put it into free movement. You'll see now I only have an arrow going side to side and up and down. I need to move it down in the other on the other plane. So I'm going to click on free movement. That's going to give me this green arrow that now allows me to move it below the floor of my floor plan. And that's all that free movement does. It gives me an extra arrow to, whoop, there we go, to move things in all directions and to also rotate things in all directions. So if you click on free movement and then click on rotate, now I can rotate in all directions as well. And all of these arrows, even though this one is gray, it's a little confusing, all of these arrows are active. Okay, so now that I've resized it as needed, I've positioned it appropriately. Now I'm going to click on it again. And this time I'm going to click modify so that I can specify the different areas that need different textures. Okay. So when you go into modify, the first thing that it's going to do is hide the environment that you're working in. If you need to see it, you simply go down here to hide environment and turn that tool off, and then it will bring your house back. And now what we can do is grab our pen tool. This just draws straight lines for us, and we can define the different areas that are going to receive different textures. So maybe I go over here, and from here to here, this area is going to be road. Maybe I'm going to have a little bit of like a patio or something that's flush with the ground, or some sidewalk here. I can draw that along the edge using my pen tool. It's going to snap me onto the edge. And then I can drag this all the way across. And then maybe back here we have lawn. We'll just keep it simplistic for the sake of time, but just to give you an idea. So now that I've drawn these hard lines, you can always check by grabbing push pull and just hovering your cursor over each section to make sure that your lines have been drawn all the way to the edge. And all of these will be separate sections that you can manipulate, which means you can also apply different textures to them. So if I go into my texture catalog and go to other, I can find ground, liquid, all sorts of outdoor options. So maybe I apply that. Let's make that a bit more realistic looking. And then there's road. And then I can just rotate this. Say 90 degrees. There we go. I can do dirty pavement. I can do cement blocks, all sorts of things. All right, and I'm just going to increase that. Okay, so rather than having 3 different blocks, I've created one. I can move it as an individual unit. I'm not lining anything up. And this is a much easier way to do that. So now let's talk about rendering something like this from the outside. When we go into, oops, actually, let's go back here. One thing that I want you to look for is, let me see if I have it shortlisted. There's a lighting tool called Only White Light in your catalog. And this is an actual product. So it's not in your texture catalog. We do have light in the texture catalog that you can apply like luminance to, right, to a product. This is an actual product. So I'm going to drag and drop it into the space. Nope, you know what, I might want to dock to the ceiling. There we go. Drag and drop it to the ceiling. And we're going to resize this and use this to create some artificial light for our rendering for the outside environment so that we don't have that issue with textures being overexposed. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is put this into free movement and then click on rotate because I want it to face my the outside rather than be sitting on the ceiling. And then I'm going to go back to free movement and I'm going to move it on out of the house because I don't need it here. I'm going to double click to zoom me in, and then I'm going to resize this. I do recommend giving this a little bit more thickness because we're going to go into 2D mode to place this about 60 feet away from this building. And it can be, with it being so skinny, it can be a little difficult to get your cursor on in 2D mode. So hopefully I just made that thick enough. We'll see. If not, we'll come back to 3D and fix it. All right. So I'm going to have this cover pretty much the width of this building. And I'm going to give it a little bit more height. I keep double clicking. There we go. Okay. I'm going to go into 2D. And there it is. Let's see if I can get a hold of it. Zoom on in. Make it thicker. So yeah, this is a useful tool, but it does get a little tricky to get a hold of. So I can just exaggerate it for now. Okay, there we go. So now what I would recommend doing, we tried many different options and we found that 60 feet, or it's equivalent to 60 feet for you, wherever you're located, is a good distance from the structure to provide enough lighting without it being overexposed. So how you can do that here in 2D mode is use your ruler tool. And you can either click on the house itself, or you could start from out here if you wanted. And then I'm just going to start moving it, and then I'm just going to enter 60 feet. It'll set that for me. And then I'm going to click on this and I'm going to move it out. Great. Okay. If I maybe felt like this needed to be made longer to cover all of this, I could just do that here by clicking on resize. And now we're going to go into render mode. Okay, so we're using this as artificial light. Like I said, this is essentially a photographer's tool. And the reason for this is because in render mode, if you're rendering an exterior space, you're not only having the effect of the auto lighting, but you're having the effect of the sun. And that's when it kind of becomes too harsh. And then if you turn those things off and you have no other lighting, it becomes too dark, right? So what we're going to do here, we have our artificial lighting. Now we're going to click on lighting and we're going to select no daylight. We don't have any interior lighting to begin with, but I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to select no environment. And then I'm going to scroll down and turn off the sun. Okay. So now we're basically saying we don't want any of the light that the software is providing. We want to provide our own light. Now, if we take a render of this, it won't be overexposed. So I'll get a preview there. If we find it's a little too bright or a little too dim, we could change the size of this light wall that we've built from the catalog. We could move it further away or a little bit closer and mess around with that. But I do recommend keeping these settings consistent of no daylight and turning the sun off because those won't really help you with an exterior render. Anonymous is asking, what type of laptop/computer do you use or recommend? What RAM size can offer best results using Foyer? Great question. So this is another thing that comes up. So this is like a little dark. I would probably say I'll move that light fixture a little bit closer or make it a little bit taller to add more light. Okay. Which we can play around with that in a second. So to answer your question about the laptop, so I'm on a MacBook Air and I want to say my computer has 16 gigabytes of RAM. Basically, if you can get your hands on a gaming computer, that's like the best. The software is going to work the fastest. But because the software is web-based, it does pull RAM from your computer. So a few considerations. Number one, all other programs that you have open on your computer, either tabs, other projects in Foyer, other programs that you have downloaded to your computer, other design programs, all of that is pulling RAM. So the more tabs that you have open, which I feel like every designer has like 52 tabs open on their computer at all times, is all going to be competing with the software. So that will slow the software down. So I would exit out of any projects or programs that you don't absolutely need to have running. And that will help increase the speed. That's number one. Number two is if you can have a computer that has a minimum of 8 gigabytes of RAM, but ideally 16 plus would be even better. The software can work on a processor with as low as 4 gigabytes of RAM, but you're going to have issues with lag. The bigger the project, the more things in the room, the more RAM it pulls. So here in 2.0, that has been largely corrected. You'll notice that if you are in the old software, when you go into 3D mode, it would bring up a window asking you, do you want to work in normal, optimized, or heavy mode? And a lot of people would just take whatever the recommended version was, which is great because the software is recommending it for a reason based off of the size of your project. But they wouldn't quite understand why it was asking that. That is asking, so let me show you right here. If I click here, mode, heavy mode is right now, but I've got optimized and normal. So optimized uses 4 gigabytes of RAM, but but gives you the least amount of detail on on any products in the space from the closest distance, right? So you might only be 10 feet away from a sofa, but rather than seeing all of the tufts in the sofa, and maybe it's gray, you just see kind of a gray box. And then you have to zoom in to see the detail, right? So from a shorter distance, you get less detail when it's only using 4 gigabytes of RAM in optimized mode. But the offset is that the software can work faster for you. Normal mode uses 8 gigabytes of RAM and gives you more detail from further away. And then heavy mode uses 16 gigabytes of RAM and gives you all of the detail from the furthest distance. So you would have to be really, really zoomed out before things turned into just like colorful blocks. So that's what this means. You can change the mode like I just showed you. Once you're in 3D mode, you can, if you notice it's running slow, you can click here, go down to heavy mode and change it to optimized or to normal to speed up the process. And then a lot of times if I'm like, okay, now I really do need to see some quick detail, I just switch over to heavy mode real quick, get the detail, and then drop it back down to optimize. But this is something that has been improved in Foyer 2.0. So the software works much faster and you don't have that option anymore to select normal, optimized, or heavy. But still, more RAM on your computer is always going to help the software run better. Okay. Alrighty, let's see what else. So Nicole is asking, what time of day does that mimic? Okay, so great question. Let's head back into render mode. So that mode that I was in right there, and you're new to Foyer, so this is great that you're here. I do recommend you also sign up for a free masterclass or demo where we can walk you through all of the basics. So this is daytime. If I go to lighting, I can shoot in day, evening, or night, and you'll notice you see the lighting in evening and then you see it at nighttime, it dims. And then day is the brightest. So this is with the auto lighting turned on. Let me get my little zoom banner. I don't think you guys can see it, but it keeps blocking my view here. If I turn the sun off, that dims it, but it's still daytime. That's actually a nice benefit of turning the sun off when you are in an interior space or rendering an interior space, is that you can turn the sun off, but still have it be daytime. So it just lessens the amount of light coming into the space. It doesn't make it night just because you've gotten rid of the sun. But yes, so like I was saying with that one, I would say, okay, you know what? This isn't very tall. So I think the first thing that I would do is go back. I'm double clicking left and right here lately. Would go back, make this a bit larger because I wasn't quite satisfied with how much light was hitting that. Now I've got a bit more light. Go back into take a render and then just reset those settings. And you can of course save those settings. Nicole, if you're not familiar with this too much yet, I can go to lighting, click on no daylight, no environment, turn my sun off, and then I can save my view, but that's also going to save my angle. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my angle right. Maybe I zoom out here and then click on save view, save as new view, give it a name. And now I can access that here under views. So all of the lighting settings, all of the angle settings are saved for me. So if I go back to 3D and change the position of that artificial light, I haven't lost this view. I don't have to come back in and redo all of that. Okay, so let's get a preview again and see how we like this. Alrighty, so while that's generating, what's nice is that I can go to 2D mode, 3D mode, wherever. This will continue to generate and work in the background. Let me check the chat box. Okay. Great. Okay, everything's up to date with you guys. Okay. So let's see. Oh, no floor and no ceiling. Let's talk about that. So this is a common question that pops up. I'm going to delete this for now. Is I've drawn out my space, I've drawn out my floor plan, I've gone into 3D mode, I don't have a floor and I don't have a ceiling. So there's an example of that. I'd probably bring it a little bit closer to add a little bit of brightness. Yeah. So you go into a 3D mode, you don't have a floor or ceiling to work with. You should. So if you don't, that's a cue to you that something's amiss in 2D mode. And 9 times out of 10, what the issue is that one of your exterior walls is not joined. So sometimes what will happen is a designer will be working on, say, an open floor concept, but they're not designing all of the spaces. So what we might see is kitchen and dining, and then that leads into like a living space up here. And so how they'll draw out their walls, it'll look like this. Because this leads into an area, so there's not a wall there, but they're not designing that space, they leave this open. And what will happen now if we go into 3D mode is your space might look a little something like this. So you'll notice that we have 4 joined walls here, and we have a floor, a default floor and a default ceiling, but in this space that's been left open, we have neither. That's because one of your exterior walls has not been joined. So if you have an open floor concept, what I recommend doing, if this leads into a living space, just draw out, just give a rough kind of visual of the space, right? Goes something like that. If you're not working in the space, that's fine, but we still need to close this off. And then I'm just going to click the escape button. I'm just going to grab this corner and tuck it in. Okay. Now we have a floor to work with. And when you're showing your renders, they can see, okay, this leads into that area. Or if you have an archway here, you would draw a wall and then add the archway in, it will create the cavity for you. And that's another way to show that it leads somewhere. But you still want to have this space here, because if you have a wall, let me show you, if you've drawn a wall here and then added an archway, and then there's nothing out here, then your renders are going to be looking out into the outside environment, which is going to look a little weird. So if I go to my catalog and I look up doorway, drag and drop that onto the wall. We don't want it looking out into the wilderness, right? Or into the yard or whatever it may be. Oop, you know what, that might have been a little thin. Okay, we'll give this a second. Right. Oh, actually, great question that I just remembered that I've gotten asked a few times this past week that works perfectly for this doorway is, some designers will say, well, it's an open space, but there's no frame, right? It's not like a door frame like this. So what I recommend doing, it's just the wall, right? It's just drywall cut around a space. Use invisible material. So let me resize this. Right, let's say it looks something like that, but it just needs to be the wall. Resize it as needed, go into your texture catalog and find invisible material. Looks just like this. I always save it to my short list and then click, and then you're going to apply it to the door frame itself. And now that's invisible. I'm going to click escape. Right, so now when we take a render of this, it will just be this edge where it meets the wall. And even though we can see the outline here in 3D mode, it will not render. Okay. I don't know if that answered a question for some of you, but this has come up a few times, so perfect segue. Alrighty, last troubleshooting comment for not having a ceiling, a default ceiling, or floors when you head into 3D mode. Let's say you do that, you come back here and all of your walls are joined, which, by the way, how do you know a wall's not joined? It's either glaringly obvious like this, or what you're going to search for are these yellow squares at the end of a wall. If you see any yellow squares, that means this wall has a gap between the wall next to it, and therefore it's not joined, you won't get a default floor. So that's how you target and figure out what's going on. If you don't have any yellow squares and you're like, what's going on? Here's what I recommend doing. Grab any wall that's in the space that's not, doesn't have a floor, move it out, and then just move it back in, literally right back into place. Just snap it right back in and then go into 3D mode. So sometimes if while you're moving walls around or drawing or changing dimensions, at some point it might have not been joined to something. And then the software kind of like held on to that previous version, so that when you go into 3D mode, it's not recognizing that now the wall has been joined. So if you just move it out of place and snap it back in, it's like a little refresh to the system, and then you should have a floor and a wall. Okay, but that's on a rare occasion. Usually it's the yellow node, no wall situation. Alrighty. Okay, next is multi-level spaces. So this is an important one to know up front so that you don't end up doing double the work. How this software works is you're always going to be building from the floor up, and you're always going to be working with the tallest measurement of your space and then building down from the ceiling. So what I mean by that is, let me delete some of this space. Work with a little bit of a smaller space here. So let's say this is like an entryway into a house, and then it leads back here into a space that's more open. But these walls down here need to be maybe 10 feet, and then they open into some kind of like cathedral 20-foot ceilings. You want to know what's the tallest point of the house or the space that you're working in. And that's what you're going to set your wall height to first here in 2D mode. So get all of your interior dimensions correct, and then click on any wall, click on edit. And then the first option that pops up here under wall properties is going to be the ceiling height. So here in full wall, you'll see that changes will apply to the complete floor plan. If I change this to partial, changes will only apply to the selected wall. The issue with this is that you can't always exceed a certain amount. So what I always do is I click on full wall and I set this, and then what we're going to do is build down from other areas. Here's how you do that. Click here. Let's say the tallest point is 20 feet. We're going to click on 20 feet, click enter, and that's going to set all of my walls to that 20-foot mark. Now we're going to head into 3D mode. I prefer to do it in 3D. You could do it in 2D as well. And now I'm going to create a faux ceiling that drops down 10 feet from this entryway area. And I can do that in one of two ways. I can use a ceiling docked cube from the catalog and simply drag, drop, and resize this. So when I click on this block, I'm going to click on resize. And then when I start to move this, I'm going to set this measurement to 10 feet. And then resize it across the ceiling. And then I can apply a ceiling paint color to this section. Or if you have an area that's not a simple square or rectangle, that's where using create new product would really come in handy. Okay, so I might do that. Right, and we're just creating that faux ceiling space right here. When you're inside and render, obviously you won't be rendering from out here to see any of that. And then it will open up into this kind of great room in here with 20-foot ceilings. So let me show you a ceiling design as an example. I go into my catalog and I look up ceiling designs. Let's see if I'll find a cathedral option here. Let's use this for speed. There we go. I'm going to drag and drop it. I'm going to rotate this into the space. I want it running this direction. You can also do this in 2D. And then I'm just going to resize it across the space. What you'll want to know, so we know that to the peak is 20 feet, but you'll also want to know from the floor to the start of the peak. So if this wall height here is 10 feet, then you're going to set this dimension here to 10, right? Because we're working with 20 feet. So now I know that all of my measurements are correct. The peak is 20, from the floor to the start of the peak is 10, and this is just a standard ceiling at 10 feet as well. Now I'll just resize the length of this across the entire ceiling. And then when I'm inside, you won't see these little cat ears. This is only from the outside, but when we render the scene, you will not see that because we'll be inside the room. There we are. Okay, how you would do this from 2D mode is by clicking on 2D. Right now we're in floor plan mode, so you can't see any of that. You're going to click there, go to ceiling plan, and here are both of our structures that are sitting on the ceiling. And now I could resize this manually. I actually prefer to do it here in 2D because it's just an easier view. But totally a matter of preference for you. You can do them in either. Let me check the Q&A real quick. Okay. All righty. So that's for ceilings that are dropping down. For a multi-level space, so let's use another example. I'm going to delete this. Let's say we have, I'll do a create new product. This walks in, this is an entryway, and then there's 2 steps, and then the living area, which is back here, is actually at a higher, slightly higher level. What you need to know, the information that you need to know first off is how tall are the ceilings? You're going to add the ceiling height. So if the ceilings in here are 8 feet and the ceilings in here are 8 feet, and then the steps going up are 2 feet in height, then what we want to do is set our total, we want to add those numbers. So we're going to add our 8-foot ceilings plus the 2 extra feet that we need in room for our steps. And we're going to make our total ceiling height in 2D mode 10 feet. Let me know if the way I just explained that made sense. If not, I'll clarify. Okay, so we're going to set this to 10 feet. Go back into the software. And now what we're going to do is create a faux floor that raises up. So this is 10. We're going to add 2 feet up here and then have like a lifted or a lofted space here a bit. So then the remaining walls will only be 8. And then what we can do here is create a 2-foot high faux ceiling that drops down to bring this down to 8. I'm also going to make this much shorter because otherwise it's going to get in the way. Okay, so let me take this step by step for you. First, ceiling docked cube, and then we're going to head into create new product. There we go. I'm going to head into 2D ceiling plan mode, and I'm going to resize it here. Let me zoom in for you guys. And you see how this is just easier. It's an easier view than being angled up and looking at the ceiling in 3D. Okay, there we are. Now we're going to go into here. And by the way, how I'm doing this is I'm holding down the right click on my mouse. So to use a mouse for the software, if you're very new, hold down your right click and that activates the pan tool, or you can just turn it on and off here, but this is easier. Okay, so I'm going to get this nice top view, and then I'm going to go into create new product. When I do that, I'm going to again start with my rectangle tool. And what we're going to draw is we're going to cover the entire living space right there. And I'm just clicking once, moving out my mouse and clicking again. I'm not holding down my left click here. I'm going to orbit to the side. And because we've already established that we need a 2-foot lift, I'm going to grab push pull. I'm going to start moving this and I'm going to type in 2 feet, click enter. All right. Now we'll move this guy, but we also need to create stairs here. So let's double click over on this area. And now we can create stairs that are built into this space. So we can use the rectangle tool. You can use your ruler tool to specify the, how far out from the wall it comes and set those guidelines for yourself, or you can just grab the pen tool and use the door frame here as a guide. So I'm just clicking, clicking, clicking. Okay. Now I'm going to find my midpoint and the software is going to do that for me. So if I just run my pen along this, it's going to snap me onto the midpoint and I'm going to define 2 stairs here. Okay. So this will be 1 step. This will be 2 steps, or the second step. Now I'm going to grab push pull and I'm going to push this down. And then I'm going to grab this and push it down. And now I've created steps going up into this space. I'm just going to click escape, click on done. And now I've created a multi-level space with 8-foot ceilings in both. And now you can start placing your furniture. You can apply your floor texture here, right? Whatever that needs to be. And what's nice about Create New Product is that every single one of these edges here for the stairs and for the top can be a different texture if you need it to be. So if we want this to be a wood, drag and drop. And there we go. Right? And you'll see that the stairs have not been affected. Now I can place my furniture on top of this structure. What would happen is if you kind of don't know that this is how the software works, you might place all of your furniture on the default floor. And then people were in a position of having to put everything into free movement and raise it up off the floor once they learned about this process, change their ceiling height, and it would just become a little messy because they were having to backtrack and do the work all over again. So this is a really important thing to know up front if you have multi-level spaces. Okay. I see something popped up in the chat box here. Awesome. Great. Alrighty. So yeah, and this is also one of those things that I've run into issues where maybe I'm working with a client and there's multi-level spaces. And before I knew how to do it in the software, I wouldn't know to get this measurement from my client when I was in the space taking measurements. And then I would have to backtrack and be like, by the way, how tall are your stairs? What's this measurement? So good to know going into it that you'll need to have all of this information. Jean is asking, would this be useful for building outdoor porch stairs too? Yeah, absolutely. So great. Let me answer that for you. I'm just going to delete some of this stuff to get it out of the way. Oh, I deleted it already. There we go. Let me delete that too. Okay, so let's say, how fun should we get with this? So let's say that this is your house and it's sitting on like an above ground basement and you want to show that, but you're not actually rendering the interior of the basement. It's just for the exterior. Maybe you're putting stone around the base of it, like a cement basement, and you want to show what that would look like. And there need to be steps added. Let's make this as complicated as possible. Let me show you how to do that using Create New Product. Definitely Create New Product. So click rectangle tool again, our best friend. We're just going to cover this space. You do have to start by drawing on the floor, the wall, or the ceiling. So that's why I always start there. And then you can move it out into what I refer to as outer space. Okay. So I'm just going to cover that. I'm going to orbit to the side, push, pull, however tall that foundation of that house needs to be. We'll just say it's 4 feet for now. And then I can adjust the edges to be whatever they need to be. So I'm just going to pull this out slightly. And pull this out slightly. Then I'm going to click on done. Select the rectangle, put it into free movement and bring it on down. This is object snapping. So you see that little blue line that's telling me what to do right now. If I don't want it to tell me what to do, I'm going to go to File, Settings, and then I'm going to go to Object Snapping and I'm going to turn it off, which I do most of the time. And that gives you control over where all of your objects are placed. Now I can click on this and I can have more control and it's not going to be snapping in and out of place for me. Okay. So we've got it in place. I can click on this again and go back into modify, unhide my environment because I do want to see the house. If this little area needed to go away, I would simply grab my pen tool, click along the edge here, and it doesn't have to be perfect because we can adjust it using push-pull. Push-pull is your best friend. Click, click. I've defined this as a separate space, right? And now I'm going to click on this and I'm going to push it down. And I'm going to slice it away. And now it's gone. And now because I have this big edge, I can tuck this in and I can tuck this in. Oops, there we go. And get rid of that. Okay, click escape. Now we've got a little bit more of a foundation here. And the next thing that I need to do is create some steps. Push pull again, right? We're going to grab just a hold of this plane here that we want to manipulate. Then you can define where your stairs need to be. So let's say the stairs don't go edge to edge. Maybe they come in a little bit. So we can say that we'll use our ruler tool. We'll click on the edge and we'll move it in 3 feet on either side. I'm just going to click, start moving. Once I start moving my mouse, that window to set my dimensions will appear. Enter 3 feet and click enter. Okay, and now I'm going to grab my pen tool or my rectangle tool, doesn't matter, to click on this ruler and drag it out. So this is creating a rectangle right here. If I grab push pull, you'll see these are now separate spaces. The next thing that I'll do is define the steps. So again, you can use your ruler tool to be very precise and enter this. Let's say it's going to be 211 for the depth of the stairs. And then I'll do one more at 211. Okay. Grab my pen tool. It's going to snap me onto the ruler. And then I'm going to do it again here. So our ruler is our kind of our guideline, and then our pen and our rectangle tool draw those hard lines, and that's what defines the areas officially. If you draw a line and you're like, oh, it's on a diagonal, it's not correct, just grab your trim tool and click on the line and it will erase it. Okay. Now push pull again. I'm going to orbit to the side here. I'm going to bring this down and then bring this down. And there we go. Right. And you can get super, super crafty with how this looks. If you have columns in the front here, all you have to do is define that particular space, or you should. Of course, I've set it in, so now it probably won't happen, but let me see if we can extend this upward. No. Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. So if you had to have columns here and maybe these had like stone cladding on them, you could do that. Tuck this in. Move this out. Just keep in mind it's gonna, separate from the base here, but you get the point. You have a lot of flexibility in what you do. And what's nice is this is all one structure. So not only in create new product, I can modify using push-pull, modify the size of each individual plane. But then when I'm working with this in 3D mode, I'm moving it as a single structure. So you could create this entire scene using cubes from the catalog, but you're going to be piecing everything together, and it's going to be really just a much harder process than if you were to use create new product and create it as one singular item. I'll do the same over here just for aesthetic's sake. Oops. So Jean, I hope that answered your question. And it's all a matter, the specifications for, you know, the height and everything is really just a matter of, are you doing this for the aesthetic of it, just to show them what it would look like with certain finishes, or are you doing it really to scale because you're building the structure in? Yeah, this is obviously just for the aesthetic. But then you would need, you know, all of these measurements is the point I'm making. So there we go. And I actually do have a webinar just on exteriors where we create, you know, roofs, peaked roofs. We do have 1 or 2 roofs in ceiling designs, but it's very easy to create a peak and create new product. I can show you that if you need to see, but we are running very late on time here. Okay, next question. Do you recommend rendering floor by floor in a residential build or creating a 3-floor home in one project? Because of the size of what the amount of RAM that it would pull, I would recommend doing floor by floor. And then just rendering them and putting them in a presentation where it runs through all of it. Or you can do a walkthrough, a 3D walkthrough of each floor, and then those would just be separate links that they walk through the space. But I definitely wouldn't recommend doing, all 3 floors in one. Okay. Alrighty, guys, we are actually over time. I apologize. I lost track there. We do have an exteriors webinar, like I just said, to check out. There's also tons of create new product webinars, and you have my email at rachel@foyer.com. So if anything else pops up, do feel free to let us know. The last note that I'll make is that you can also go to Foyer, the Foyer community. So it's community.foyer.com. And let me type that in here for you. Sign up, it's free. I'm on there every day, and just be sure to hashtag ask a question. Any Foyer related questions, I'd be happy to answer. I'll record a quick video, send it along to you, arrange for a demo, whatever it may be. We're here to help. So that's what I have for you guys today. I hope that was useful. There's the link again. And I will see you guys next week. Alrighty, bye.